Welcome to Brush and Beyond, where we see the world through an artist's eyes and learn to express our own worlds. Hi, welcome back to Brush and Beyond, and today we're going to be making our self-portrait inspired by Gustav Klimt. Today's materials include acrylic paint, markers, pencil, Sharpie, brush, palette, and paper. Today we're going to be making a portrait inspired by Gustav Klimt's golden masterpieces like the Klimt and Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer. First, I squeezed out some brown, yellow, and yellow ochre paint and mixed it all together to create the golden background. If you have gold paint, feel free to use that as well. You can mix different portions of the paint to try and get your desired color. Once I did this, I started painting the background. If you find this a little bit difficult to do or that your paint is drying out, you can use some of the water in your cup to wet down your paint and make it easier. Once your acrylic paint has dried, take a pencil and begin drawing your portrait. This design will be inspired by Gustav Klimt's dresses, so I recommend drawing a girl. I started off by drawing an outline of the girl's hair, then created her face and neck. Feel free to draw this however you want, and you can adjust the shape, hair, and whatever designs you want. Remember, this is supposed to be your self-portrait. Next, I drew a flower in the girl's hair. Now I began drawing the dress. First, I drew down the two neck portions of the dress, and then drew the dress really big to the bottom of the page. The bigger you draw your dress, the easier it will be for you to create unique patterns and designs that we will show later on. Try and make this as big as possible so that you can have as much creative liberty as you want. Finally, for the sketch, I added on her arms and hands. Now I've started sketching on the patterns of the dress. I drew horizontal lines connecting across the dress, and inside I drew vertical lines, different triangles, or any shapes that you might want to add. This is totally up to you, depending on however you want to do your patterns. Now I connected different lines from the top to the bottom of the dress, making them wider as we went down. This will allow us to have different sections for different patterns and designs. First, I drew a classic design by Klimt, which is his boxes. Next, I created triangles, zigzagging from the right and left side of this section. Within each triangle, I added a smaller one, pointing the same direction. Next, I drew some horizontal lines down the center of the dress. And then, I started adding vertical triangles. You can also create different patterns like this within each section. Again, this is your portrait, so whatever patterns you think look best or whatever patterns you want to add, feel free to do so. Next, I created some eyes going down this section. Finally, I created another section of boxes with some circles. This is what your portrait should look like so far. Now, taking a Sharpie or a marker, as you will see my Sharpie ran out of ink, so I had to switch over to a black marker, I started outlining the hair. I then outlined the neck and the outside portions of the dress. From this point forward, you can feel free, after outlining, to use markers or paint to create the patterns and color in your painting. Personally, I did a mix of both, as I did some paint in the background and mostly markers in the actual dress to show you that either way works. Whichever one you feel is easiest or whatever you have at hand can both be used. I started by using my marker to color in a few boxes in the left side of the dress. Try and make it randomized so that your pattern looks a little bit more unique and more like Klimt's. The other boxes that I left empty, I outlined with the same black marker. Go slow when outlining the different sections as you want to follow your pencil marks as best as you can. I then began outlining my triangles, making sure to follow the lines. You can also use your eraser to erase any pencil marks that you may have missed when outlining. Now I colored in the smaller triangles within each of these triangles. For the middle section, I just continued to outline all of the horizontal lines and also create the vertical triangles. Next, for the eyes, I did the same thing, outlining each of the eyes. Finally, for the boxes and circles on the right, I did the same as the left, randomizing which ones I decided to color in. The ones that I did not color in, I left blank, as I wanted to use a different color when outlining them. On the top, I created the same triangles, outlining each with a black marker. For the face, if you decide on painting it, I recommend not outlining it first. I made a slight mistake, as we all do sometimes. If you want to use colored pencils or crayons, feel free to do so as well. You can use any materials that you think would be easiest for you. Next, I outlined the flower and created some petals. Now I began painting. Again, you can use any materials to do this. I took a skin color and began painting the girl's arms, hands, and the girl's face. If you end up painting, I recommend using a smaller brush so that you can go around the details closer without getting any paint on the markers. Next, I took a dark brown and painted in the girl's hair. This will look different for each of us, as we might have different hair colors or different colors that we want to add to the hair. Feel free to use any colors that you think look best. Gustav Klimt's paintings were often very colorful and vibrant. If you want to use a crazy color like blue or pink, you can also do that. This step I think would be easier with marker or crayon, but I decided that paint would have the brightest, most vibrant effect. I used blue paint and a small brush to create spirals coming out of the background. Blue and yellow are complementary colors, meaning that they both get brighter and more vibrant when placed next to each other. This is why the blue looks especially vibrant against the yellow background. Now I took a white and mixed it with the yellow, creating a light yellow to create patches in the background. This was very common for Gustav Klimt's paintings, as he often used real gold patches incorporated into the background of his art. Since I don't have real gold, I decided to use paint, but if you happen to have real gold, feel free to use that as well. I did this all along the background, wherever I thought would look best. Try to keep this randomized in order to create the most similar effect to Gustav Klimt's. Here is what your portrait should look like so far. Now I picked out some colors of markers. I decided to use pink, red, brown, green, blue, and black. Again, you can use any colors that you think would look best. Then I created some green patterns in the triangles pointing upwards. I used a blue marker, but decided to use blue paint over this as I thought it would look brighter. Now I took orange and colored in some of the boxes that I left empty on the left section. I then took green and added some circles and dots. In the center of each of these circles, I used a blue marker to create one dot in the center. Next, I took a brown marker and drew smaller boxes within each of the empty boxes. Now, taking a blue marker, I outlined the center of each of the eyes. Finally, using a green marker, I go in and create an abstract background in the right section of the dress. I then take orange again and color in the remaining empty boxes. I also used a brown marker to create some patterns within each of these boxes. Now I took a red marker and colored in the flower. I used my black marker to go over some of the mistakes that I made in the face when painting. You can also do this if you want to add more detail or change anything about your face. The last step is to take a brown marker in the background and create some similar patches. I did this to create some more contrast in the background and make the background stand out. Your portrait is almost done. If you have sequins or any jewels that you can add, feel free to do so. This was common in Gustav Klimt's paintings, as he often had parts of his paintings that shined. I decided to do this with white paint, as it contrasted well with the black outlines. I took a small brush and added dots of white paint at any edge or corner, or just created a circle where I thought a jewel would look nice. Now your portrait is done. This is what it should look like. Feel free to add any of your own designs or ideas onto the painting. Thank you so much for watching this art activity inspired by Gustav Klimt. We hope you'll join us next time for our next art history and art activity videos.